Let's start off talking a little bit about the Crazies. Now, obviously, it was a departure from your previous movie. So, what led you into the kind of the genre of horror, and what brought you to this film in particular?
Well, I'll start with the genre of horror. I love genre movies. I love all genre movies, and horror is one of the genre, one part of the genre of genre movies. And it's, as a kid, I was always a huge fan of horror movies. I think because I grew up in the 70s, 80s. During the time, there's some really great horror movies. Carpenter's The Thing, The Omen, The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby was a little bit before, but I watched it in the period. Invasion of the Body Snatchers were all movies that really had an influence on me as a kid. And I've always loved horror movies, and the idea of making one was really appealing to me. It's I think that horror movies and action movies are definitely cousins, if not like siblings to one another. It's for a director's point of view, it's a very similar director's muscle that's flexed in order to do a great horror set piece or a great action set piece. You need to design them properly. There needs to be a character journey from beginning to middle to end within the set piece itself. You got to have enough pieces, shoot enough shots, design the tension build into the horror release, and it's as a director, it's a really exciting and challenging and fascinating place to be working.
Right. And actually, I think that's part of what I liked about the film so much was that there are parts of it that are like an action film, not just a horror movie, Yeah,
I think, because I do love genres, all the genres of genre movies, I tend to find myself kind of mixing them in a blender and shaking them up and kind of combining them together. I can't kind of help myself with it. And I know it's often easier to have one clean, purely genre movie. It's easier to sell, and studios kind of like it that way because it's easier to tie up in a ribbon and say this is what the movie is. But I do enjoy kind of mixing them together and playing with it. And I think in the Crazies, it's first and foremost a horror movie, but it's also action, it's also sci-fi, and a bit of drama all mixed in there.
Now, one of the things I liked about it as a horror fan, but not a gore fan particularly, is that the film wasn't overly gory. It's a horror movie, but it has punctuations of gore rather than just nonstop blood and guts. So, as a first-time horror director, how did you decide to strike that balance? What were you thinking?
It's funny. It's a real. It's just a real. You just take it on a gut level. It's like. Oddly, it's kind of like gardening. I don't know if you ever do, but you gotta you look at a tree or a bush or a bunch of plants, and you kind of trim off the pieces and leave other pieces, and you just you got to go with your gut to decide how much is right, what feels right, what is the kind of the right balance that you're striking, and the key is to be able to look at it both in the moment, within the set piece, within what's happening at that moment in the screen, but also to try and see it as a cumulative effect on the viewer. It's seeing it like the way you describe it as punctuations at the end of the sentence is a good one. If the entire sentence is splattered with blood, you miss the meaning behind it, and you miss the significance of the punctuation. And I think that sporadically and carefully planned and placed punctuations can really enhance the set piece and really enhance the movie. And I think if you have too much of it, the audience becomes anesthetized to it, and they just they become it just becomes a wash, and instead of having the desired effect in the moment, it overall kind of overpowers the movie,
right, in
a negative way.
Right. Now, so for this film, you not only took on a horror film, but you took on a remake of a George Romero film. Was it daunting to kind of have that source material out there, or was it more of a benefit?
Well, it was certainly a benefit because our movie would never exist without the source material. Okay. Obviously, it's based on his material. It's the plot of his material. It's the concept that he created. So it obviously wouldn't exist without it. There's certainly, as a first feature horror movie to be remaking kind of one of the true masters of horror films, it's intimidating.
Right.
There were a couple things that made me feel more confident. One is the fact that Romero himself was the one who optioned the rights to the producers in the first place. Romero is the one who is benefiting financially from the remake, and he's the one who's deciding ultimately if the movie's going to be made or not made. Oftentimes, including with Romero in the Dawn of the Dead movie, he doesn't control the rights anymore. But with the Crazies, he does, and he he sanctioned the idea of it,
mm-hmm.
and that gave me a lot of confidence. And that obviously was of benefit. And then the fact that it's one of his lesser known movies is also made it a little bit easier to do. It's a movie with a really good idea that suffered a bit from lack of kind of resources to make it at the level that I think it really deserved.
Right.